PCOS. If you're a girl who's diagnosed with PCOS, chances are that your doctors told you to fix your diet plan and fix your exercise regime. And unfortunately, because a lot of Indians aren't educated correctly about fitness, creating a diet plan and exercise regime seems like something very difficult. But trust me, it's not. It's just about following a few basic steps to make your body better than it was yesterday. Now, before we start today's video, I highly recommend you go and watch the video I made on PCOS science. If you're a girl and whether or not you've suffered from PCOS, it's your duty to know everything there is to know about PCOS. It is one of the most common problems faced by girls in modern day society, and the only way we can eliminate such a problem is with mass education. So make sure you get yourself educated first. Now, before we get to the actual PCO diet plan, there's a few things you need to know. Firstly, insulin resistance. Almost every girl who's suffering from PCOS also suffers from insulin resistance. To understand this term better, first you need to understand the function of insulin in your body. Now, our bodies derive energy from carbohydrates. Every time you consume a carbohydrate, it's broken down into glucose inside your body, and then the glucose is converted into energy through insulin. Insulin converts the glucose to energy. Now, coming to carbohydrates, every single carb is rated on the GI scale. The GI or glycemic index scale is a scale from 0 to 100 where 100 represents glucose. It basically signifies how fast a carbohydrate is digested by your body. Now, glucose or sugar is rated at 100 because it's very easily digested by your body. It's digested very fast. So your body takes that little bit of sugar and converts it into energy very rapidly. But in order to convert it into energy, in order to convert all that glucose into usable energy, your body needs to create an insulin spike. Now, regular insulin spikes in your bloodstream through consuming sugar or high GI food is very bad from a fat loss perspective. It'll make it very difficult for you to lose fat and keep a lean body in the long term. But it's even worse for girls suffering from PCOS. Now, sugar, which is rated at 100 on the GI scale, will cause an insulin spike in your bloodstream. But these insulin spikes are also caused because of high GI carbohydrates. Every single carb in the world is rated using sugar as the reference. So the carbs which cause a similar effect as sugar are rated higher on the GI scale. The closer they are to 100 in terms of value, the bigger the insulin spike you'll get in your bloodstream. So the ground rule is that you want to avoid sugar and you want to avoid all high GI carbohydrates. Most girls who suffer from PCOS are insulin resistant. So they're not very sensitive to the effects of insulin. Now, for human beings who are not suffering from insulin resistance, they just need a little bit of insulin to convert a little bit of glucose into energy. But for someone who is insulin resistant, they need a lot more insulin to create that same amount of energy from that same amount of glucose. Now, as a girl suffering from PCOS, because your insulin levels are always raised a little bit, it messes up your hormonal system entirely. That's why when doctors tell you that PCOS is a hormonal problem, they mean this. It's this perpetual high level of insulin in your bloodstream. What you need to remember is that your job now is to kind of normalize your insulin levels. And how do you do that? You do that by fixing your diet. You want to avoid all those spikes in insulin thanks to your diet. Remember, your insulin is already high. So your job as someone who's suffering from PCOS is to, one, avoid all those insulin spikes thanks to the sugar and the high GI food. And two is to reduce your fat percent. Insulin resistance usually happens because of a higher fat percent than normal. So you need to go at this with the intention of weight loss. Learn everything there is to know about carbs and learn which the low GI carbs are, which the high GI carbs are, all the foods that are listed in the two groups, and obviously avoid sugar at all costs. Now, getting to the actual diet plan. 3 ground rules. It's going to be a high protein diet. Because it's a high protein diet, you'll need to stay hydrated all the time. Keep checking your urine to make sure that it's clear most of the time. And the 3rd ground rule is avoid sugar at all costs. I know that completely cutting off sugar from your diet can be a little bit difficult, especially for girls who generally have sweet tooths. So I'm gonna work out a way for you to handle that situation. Now, there's 2 points in the day where you can afford an insulin spike: for breakfast and after a workout. So in this case, breakfast will start with an insulin spike in the form of a fruit. A lot of people have this misconception that fruits don't give you insulin spikes. Now, you gotta keep in mind that sugar gives you the biggest insulin spike, but fruit also contains fruit sugar. Now it's definitely a more blunt spike when compared to something like pure table sugar, but it's still an insulin spike. And as someone suffering from PCOS, you want to minimize these insulin spikes. So you're going to get your insulin spike from fruit in the morning. Every single day, change up your fruit a little bit. That's the first thing you eat when you get up in the morning. Just a small serving of fruit. Now, along with fruit, it's very important for you to also consume some form of protein, and these are your options. Keep in mind the written form of this diet plan along with all the options is in the description box, so make sure you check that out. Now, ideally between breakfast and lunch, I'd suggest you don't start snacking. Instead, have a filling breakfast and go for a filling lunch. Now, as for lunch, once again, you got to go for a lean source of protein. These are your options, and you can combine this with a low glycemic index carbohydrate. Take a good serving of it, say a big bowl of any of these options. And if you're going for rotis, about 2 or 3 rotis should work well. You can also include legumes or sprouts or dal at this point, and you can have a salad, but keep in mind the salad shouldn't have potato. Coming to snack time, which for many girls is time for their pre-workout meal. Remember, your PCOS problem is going to get destroyed really fast if you combine this diet with an exercise regime. So definitely consider doing that. Even 20 minutes of walking in a day is good enough. So prior to that exercise regime, you want to once again consume a small portion of low glycemic index carbohydrates. Now, if you're someone who works out, you definitely need an insulin spike after your workout regime. So for that insulin spike, once again, take up a small bowl of fruits. If you don't work out, you do not need this insulin spike. So your last portion of carbohydrates is that small portion of low GI carbs you had at around 4 or 5 o'clock for snack time, and you're not supposed to have anything till dinner time. And if you're someone who loves their tea or coffee and can't give up that little bit of sugar in the tea and coffee, that's all right. We're all human and you can't restrict yourself that much. But if you want to go for a healthier option, go for stevia, which is a herbal sweetener which does not harm your health. And finally, coming to dinner. The protocol is the same as lunch, but you have to avoid all forms of carbohydrates at this point. Remember, insulin resistance is caused due to a high fat percent. So your job, besides avoiding all those insulin spikes, is to lower down your fat percent, is to lose a little bit of weight. And you will lose weight if you avoid carbs after dark. It just automatically happens, especially to young girls whose metabolisms are high. That's the kind of protocol I'd give when it comes to a PCOS diet. Same as lunch, but avoid all forms of carbohydrates for dinner. That's all you need to remember. Hey ladies, so that was the diet to help you cope with PCOS, but keep in mind a key to curing your own PCOS is reducing your fat percent. And in order to reduce your fat percent, you've just got to get educated here. In order to get educated here, make sure you check out my weight loss playlist on BeerBiceps, which is tailor-made for beginners. It'll teach you everything there is to know about nutrition. If you liked today's video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to BeerBiceps. Until next time ladies, from Ranveer, see you.